Hey, you know what makes a story great?
It's the people. The people.
I know it's common to talk about people like hating Hollywood and wokeness and such, but I know at this point a lot of you aren't angry, really. Not anymore. You're bored. You're apathetic. Like, oh, what's that? A male feminist is making a video game that subverts Christianity and the heroine has a masculine look? Yawn. More and more, stories are not focused on characters who behave like real people because the writers have never met any. They've only seen online avatars and Tumblr fan forums. So all that's left then is the plot, which leaves you with and then stories. This happens, and then this happens, and then this happens.
And then.
No and then!
And then.
No and then!
And then.
No and then!
Such was the case in Amazon's Wheel of Time television adaptation that was recently canceled, which shouldn't be surprising because even calling this an adaptation is as generous as calling a kid with a lemonade stand an entrepreneurial citrus mogul. That show died for reasons which we will discuss, but there is hope for other productions. Hollywood writers can solve this problem with one weird trick. I'll demonstrate. Sorry, I don't give away the goods for free. Something else that isn't free? Taking care of children and supporting families. That's why this video is bookending a very successful fundraiser for Safe Families for Children, and all the ad money is going to go to them as well. I'll tell you what they do at the end. Now, it's going to be difficult not to spend this whole video just gloating, but I will attempt to stay on just one main thesis point, which is the showrunner, Rafe Judkins, like so many current writers, does not understand people. And that is why this show and so many others fail. A story requires compelling characters, and this show has none. They possess no traits that are recognizable or engaging for the average viewer. They don't understand what is important to fantasy genre fans, so they can't give it to you. Conversely, the concepts and themes that Rafe and others do care about are so low on the priority list for most viewers that they seem wholly alien and pointless. The author of this article is excited about Rafe lifting countless bits of queer subtext from the novels and pushing them into the forefront of his adaptation. But I doubt most of you really cared, just as you probably didn't care about the numerous and extraneous scenes featuring the throuple of Alana, Ivan, and Maxim, the latter being played by Taylor Napier, Rafe's longtime boyfriend. This added to the boredom of the show and diluted it, because those characters exist to well, honestly, they exist because Rafe wanted heavy polyamory in his fanfic, but also they're there to teach the viewer about the bond between Aes Sedai and Warder. Except that was already being covered by major characters Moraine and Lan. That's inefficient writing in a story that is already packed with characters, and it's just one of the many reasons why the show was plain bad. Not just as an adaptation, just bad. Now, because it was such an egregious bait and switch, I don't owe this show any goodwill. I don't need to judge it on its own merits, as so many defenders will plead, because it doesn't have its own merits. It was sold on a lie.
But I'm a generous God.
And I will do it anyway to explain why there is no audience for this trash television, hence its cancellation. And I'm not sure why anybody's confused when you got scenes like this.
A Gleeman's apprentice. Then, how was the song?
Fine.
Girls, rub on your titties.
Now, if you haven't, I do encourage you to read these books, and you'll quickly discover why Amazon wanted to ride this name recognition and why so many people love this series. When you read them, you can tell Robert Jordan lived an actual life. He met real people. He understood the concerns and challenges and aspirations of humans that live outside the LA screenwriting bubble. Now, I'll tell you about the show's failings, but also I'm going to tell you why his characters feel real and his series contains themes and ideas that touch us. Just like I need you to touch that like button. Blood and ashes, I got him on that one. Okay, hey, real quick. New cup. My kids were at Hobby Lobby, bacon and eggs. Super cool, but I got to show you this. My daughter has been crocheting, and I asked her for a Moogle, and it's finally done. Look at this guy. Now, a good majority of this video is going to be about how the show failed at gender dynamics, because that was one of the biggest themes in the books. But first, let's hit some smaller topics that likely put viewers off a little bit, and hopefully you're going to see how these little problems add up to an audience that simply is not invested. Now, it's important to reiterate how much most viewers do not care about the added eroticism in the show, and exponentially more for the homoeroticism. A key concept that pushers of this kind of stuff do not understand is that does not care is not the same as hates, and it's also different from does not mind. Does not care is pure indifference, like how I do not care about soccer or football or whatever for you international folks. I am 100% neutrally uninterested, neither good nor bad. But if I'm looking to spend my free time and an entertainment product heavily features this sport, look, no hard feelings, I'm just probably going to find something else. Unless it has some other massive draw, like Ted Lasso, which you absolutely should be watching.
Obviously, we're bummed out that O'Brien tore his butt.
It's my upper hamstring, coach.
Well, you tore your butt, son. There's nothing to be ashamed of, okay? It happens. People tear their butts all the time in athletics.
And LGBT representation is heavily featured here. Sometimes it's shoehorned in so clumsily that it contradicts the story. In one episode this season, Rand is viewing memories from his ancestors, his direct bloodline. He sees multiple visions going all the way back to a time when one of his forefathers set out to protect some artifacts because the world was pretty much ending. Now, did you notice something that might cause a problem for the ancestral memories concept? It's just more of what the viewer doesn't care about, on top of being a head-scratching story problem. But it continues with the casting.
Sisters, this week we lost Marith Jayan.
Again, story problem, because we're working with a magic system that has distinct male and female halves. But beyond that, it's another immersion-breaking reminder to the viewer that this is a show made by people who want to impose what they wish the current world looked like instead of fleshing out this fantasy world for their entertainment. They do not understand what the people in the audience care about. Oh, real quick, because I'm going to get some comments, just want to head off the rebuttals from anybody that's going to want to say that, well, the books had transgenders and they're going to bring up Erengar. I just want you to please take a minute, consider the implications of using the example of one of the villains, a highly lustful man who was reincarnated into a woman's body as an ironic punishment by Satan. Do you want to use that? Now, that apathy and disconnect are magnified when the production continually has things that look or feel a little off, like Wheel of Time's horribly executed visual diversity. This is an issue that has been plaguing fantasy television for years now, because the folks making these shows don't know how people behave. They know what virtues they want to signal. But the reality is that people tend to congregate in like groups. Now, weirdly, right now, I know some of you are going to feel vaguely uncomfortable at my assertion there. You might even feel the defensive compulsion to tell me that your friend group, they're not like that, because you've been conditioned to think that this is wrong somehow. But simply go outside, look around, and pay special attention to all the homogenous groups of people that are milling about together. And you will need to pay attention because your brain tends to ignore the ordinary, and they're 90% of what you're going to see. This is common human behavior. It's neither right nor wrong, it just is. So when you see a show with an isolated town deep in the woods filled with every size, shape, and hue of person, something in the back of your mind just isn't having it, and it hurts the overall experience. However, in fantasy stories, the diverse utopia casting approach isn't just a slight ding to the immersion, it actively hurts the world building, which is a big deal in fantasy stories, especially the most common medieval setting kind. Not only does it clash with what our brains expect, skilled writers know that unique locations are a chance to create drama and conflict and culture shock. They give the reader or viewer distinct differences between them, so the whole story doesn't end up feeling like it could take place in one town. The kind of diversity that you should be seeing in a fantasy story are locations that are mostly the same in and of themselves, but highly different in look and culture and architecture from all the other places. Then, when you see a place like Tar Valon that really is very diverse, that tells you something about the world as well. It's called environmental storytelling. It really does kill me that fantasy TV is being botched so badly, and now it's all going to be radioactive to studios for years. Like, we're probably never getting another shot at a Wheel of Time show.
That's a lifelong obsession, Jim. I'll get over it.
But the world building was the last thing on their minds here. In addition to, like, armed Aiel walking the streets of Tar Valon when they were besieging the whole continent just 20 years prior, Season 3 opens up with a massive fight in the White Tower, complete with explosions out the side of the building and Aes Sedai killing each other in the streets. Not only would the public display of this internal fighting ruin the power and reputation of the White Tower, which presents itself as unified and wise, wanting to advise and guide the rulers of the world, it makes it especially silly when one Aes Sedai comes back to the tower in the next episode, notices a single scorch mark on the wall, and asks, well, what happened here? But nobody can find any information. Every single person in the town knows what happened! They were literally killing each other. They were throwing buildings down on top of each other. It's typical style over substance. It's bad writing. This opening and its broadcast ahead of the season was a desperate attempt to rekindle interest in a bland show with cheap flash. A fantasy world also has size. Much to my chagrin, it does matter, but the showrunners don't care about that either. In the second season, the writers needed everybody to be at a certain city for the big finale, but they mixed up what each character was doing all season, so one person, Matt especially, was in the wrong town. No worries though, he just got hit over the head, blacked out, and simply awoke there. Problem solved!
Welcome to Farm.
Who are you? How did I get here?
That's my little secret.
It's lazy, and when the writers don't care, the viewers follow suit. In this season, Perrin is heading back to his hometown, leaving Tar Valon at the same time as Alanna and her warder. When they arrive, Alanna and Maxim have been there for some time, and they knew it was dumb because they even tossed in a dialogue question about it.
What about you two? Did you use the ways to come here?
It's unimportant. It won't come up again.
That lack of travel detail makes the world feel tiny, which is precisely the opposite of what epic fantasy should feel like. Each location is just one scene away, and it robs the world of any sense of scope. It also reinforces that the characters aren't people. They are game tokens that get moved around the board. Their journeys don't matter, except journeys are where people grow, and the writers don't get that because they don't get people. These little issues cause the viewer to at least subconsciously wonder what doesn't feel right about the show. Travel times, world building, casting, these aren't just a collection of nitpicks. This is a core storytelling problem. This is a world that doesn't feel real, filled with people who also don't feel real. And the lack of care and understanding shown by the folks making this bleeds into every part of it. And even if you don't consciously notice all of them, the whole experience is weakened, and even non-book fans are going to stop watching. And they did. However, the biggest issue with the show is the handling of gender dynamics, falling into the same traps of useless male characters and flawless females that has been heavily robbing stories of their interest for over a decade now. These folks really don't get how men and women behave. It's a failure that's even more shameful since the source material was all about this dynamic and how most of our failures lie in seeing the opposite sex as the opponent instead of a partner. Robert Jordan was an expert at exploring the subtle differences or unadmitted similarities between men and women, often in very humorous ways. One particular funny scene from the books happens when Perrin and Fael are coming back to the town of Emond's Field, and the mayor's wife knows that Fael is a foreigner, so she takes her aside for a quick little woman-to-woman chat about how to handle these countrymen. Few pages later, the couple is met up with two village men who haven't seen Perrin since he left, and he was single. One takes him aside to give a little dadvice about how to handle women, and it's Basically the same advice, both times. Each group thinks they've outsmarted the other. And it's a recurring theme with that town having a town council of men and also a woman's circle. And each one thinks they're really running the town and they're letting the other play at running unimportant matters. It's hilarious. The comedy in these books is so underrated. Unfortunately, the show is made by people who are on 6th or 7th wave feminism now and would not allow any of this kind of humor, and they certainly didn't want to have even the appearance of men being superior to women. This killed the writing because it left zero room for levity, and it resulted in the female characters being flawless, which is another way of saying boring. When you're terrified to give a character flaws, you also don't give them any story whatsoever. And since the writers think that you're too stupid to understand their enlightened ideals, they also end up creating dialogue that is as terrible as it is insulting.
I came to save you, but it looks like you didn't need it.
I love this show.
What's your favorite part?
The heavy-handedness.
Also, because the showrunners favored the female characters, but wanted to keep calling this an adaptation, the men needed to be on screen for at least a while, but they had nothing to do, so they were boring. A good portion of the show features people who have little to no reason to be there. So you have a terrible viewing experience where you wonder, who is this Matt guy? And why is anybody letting this jerk hang around since he's completely useless? Oh, second season's almost over. I guess we gotta let him toot this hideous looking horn. Book says we have to, whatever. Book Matt is mischievous, impulsive, and hilarious, but will always have your back. Show Matt is just there. I can actually summarize Book Matt for you really, really quickly. Here we go. Okay. You won't catch me doing that. I just want to gamble. I'm no bloody hero, Matt exclaimed, while proceeding to do the most heroic thing. It's just that, again and again.
But if anything happened to him, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself.
The cramped nature of this adaptation leaves no room for setup or motivations to unfold. Sure, Rand goes to the waste, but what reason would he have for that with what he knows in the show? Yes, Egwene goes with him to hit those plot points, but not because she was summoned by the wise ones. Yeah, they're still doing a will they, won't they story between the two, 3 seasons in, like this is a CW drama, and they used that as her motivation. So much of the show is like that. People having thin reasons to go places from a few books away, but the lack of setup means no payoff. Matt, for some reason, joins Elaine and Nynaeve to Tanchico, along with Min, because male side characters like Julian don't exist. They happen to run into Tom, so, everybody can just claim, oh, we're being accurate. And then the party accomplishes nothing. The writers wanted to truncate the books, so they're cutting out the parts where the special male-controlling artifact is found, then supposed to be thrown in the ocean, then taken and copied, then stolen by a Forsaken, and finally used on Rand. But the result is now a group of people going to a place and doing nothing, essentially. The story still ends this season with the artifact in Forsaken hands. Total waste of screen time. I mean, Matt does randomly stumble into the red door and gets a fox head medallion that looks like it belongs on a corporate logo. Fox Law offices or something. Oh, God, this is so generic looking. Like, it looks like it came out of a vending machine at an arcade. While we're on the topic of Matt and the portal, that portal went to a demonic bizarro world featuring a terrible looking mashup between Pennywise and Up from Romper Room.
Ding dong knock knock, hey daddy do.
He's really pressuring Matt in this scene. He's in a hurry. Probably has to get back to the Pink Pony Club because What is happening here? How did they settle on this for the eelfin? Okay, it's not just that it looks crazy. It's also that we have zero setup other than the cold open, which vaguely refers to the fins. This is the problem with trying to drop book Easter eggs that require book knowledge while also giving 2 full I'm off thesis. All of this feels empty because these characters don't have any real or understandable motivations. They're simply doing what the plot tells them to do. Perrin goes back to Emond's Field, and then meets Fael, and then leads the town to a victory in battle, and then surrenders to the White Cloaks. Why? What about this character in the show would lead him to do any of this? Where has he gained this leadership will or experience? Where have we seen him wrestling with guilt over killing White Cloaks versus his duty to lead? It's just a string of required plot points. It's that way for almost everyone here. Matt, Elaine, Egwene, Lan, Min, and Nynaeve have it the worst, especially in this season. They have no solid core, no theme, no inner something that you can follow and care about. And those are the characters we actually have left. We talked about season 2, missing Huron in a previous video, so Rand missed the chance at a small experience of the responsibility of leadership. This time around, we have no Gaul. And those guys that gave Perrin that relationship advice, Tam and Abel, also gone. Tam has simply disappeared now, doesn't appear in the Battle of Emond's Field, and Abel was character assassinated way back in the first season for no reason whatsoever. So this all leaves Perrin with no male camaraderie and accountability or father figures for guidance. They also didn't show him in the Wolf Dream with Hopper, so no learning there either. In short, no relationships. The result is a person you have no reason to care about, who is suddenly in love with another character you have no reason to care about, and has an awful accent.
You know, I've never seen someone try to turn themselves in and fail.
She sat me down last year and told me she was a dark friend.
You're no fun when you're waiting to die.
And their relationship, it also means nothing. If you were bored while watching these scenes, this is why. He has no internal struggle. He's merely trudging through the plot, delivering raspy, breathy lines for drama because this actor can't act. That's it.
I did kill Jeff from Boneholding Farm.
Look, there are a ton of book examples of that male-female dynamic, but those two in particular are my favorite. They offer some of the best exploration of our different communication styles, our aspirations and presuppositions about the world. And the show touched on none of it. One of those themes is the idea of respect towards women. Perrin has the more traditional view that I think many of you guys likely share. Like, your wife is special. You treat her special. You don't raise your voice to her. That's disrespectful. But Fael comes from a culture where you respect your wife enough to be tough with her because it tells her that you know she's tough enough to handle it. Not only is this very thought-provoking, it also makes the pair interesting to read about. Their whole relationship is about the meaning of respect and leadership and submission and balance, and it's a roller coaster. Their TV versions only just met in this season, but there wasn't even a hint of a foundation for any of that. We missed out on even more fun and comedic male-female themes because of the absence of that character, Gaul. He's a male Aiel and Perrin's bro to the end. The Aiel have very different customs from the other characters, and the books had plenty of comedy when Gaul accompanies Perrin to his hometown. The show does have the women Aiel, Bane and Chiad, going with him, but their book versions are actually going with Fael. See, Perrin and Fael are being stubborn, as usual. They're traveling together, but separate, and they don't want to admit, even though they really like each other. The Aiel are being the best duelist seconds that they can, but the situation gets even more complicated and humorous when Gaul and Chiad start catching feelings for each other, and then their wingman defensive duties and jibes kind of turn into coded flirtatious banter. Yeah, whatever. It's okay. We didn't need any of that in the show. That doesn't sound interesting. It's an adaptation, you know? You can't fit everything in. And we did need to make room for that Alana, Ivan, Maxim Eiffel Tower. I mean, sure, these 5 characters majorly reinforce one of the most important themes in this story, but you know, whatever, no biggie.
That's fine. I get that, but you're wrong and I hate you.
This story is all about men and women's approach to life. Even the magic system is developed around the differences, balance, and cooperation of the sexes. That's why the evil Dark One drove a wedge between humanity by poisoning the male half of the magic. It led to a prophecy where a man would fix that side and then everyone would collectively defeat the evil. But what did the show do?
This power, it's meant for women, and women alone. And when you touch it, you make it filthy.
Now, this man has been born again. We don't know where or to whom, if he was reborn as a girl or a boy.
We would have been so much better off if you were a girl. If it's 1 dragon or 5, man or woman, the heart of every prophecy is the same.
Oh, that's right. They did that Yeah, no need to explore the nuances between men and women and what happens when they stop trusting each other. Let's slather this story with modern online attitudes instead. But it makes sense, since these writers clearly don't understand any kind of nuance and they can't see human relationships outside the perspective of sleeping together, basically. Hey, Rand and Egwene are backwoods kids, pretty much arranged to be married by their parents, so they have a really tough time sorting out their feelings. Oh, they're in bed. I kind of think Nynaeve and Lan are starting to develop feelings. Oh, they're in bed. Oh, hey, Elaine and Aviendha are becoming friends. Can't wait to see that sisterly closeness get Oh, they're in bed. It's constant. Aiel's sister wives? Ha, more like scissor wives. Alana and her warders, Lanfear and Rand, even Gawain and Galad.
Is that...
Yes! That is Galad. And that is Gawain.
Don't you like this? Is this Game of Thronesy enough for everybody? Isn't this so cool and edgy and not a total waste of screen time? This is the problem with writers who are chronically online. They're shallow. They see the world through the social media lens of visual representation, hookup culture, and bumper sticker philosophies. But you don't want that. I know you don't. Even you Game of Thrones fans. Sure, the red wedding and weird sex stuff make headlines, but if you talk to fans of the show, they'll tell you it was a character drama with characters they were invested in. However, Robert Jordan wasn't only interested in the relationship between men and women, he also wrote about larger ideas that men and women separately deal with. Now, as a man, there are so many concepts in these books that resonate with me. These characters struggle with things I struggle with. They aspire to ideals that are also my ideals. Following some of these guys through the story makes me feel understood. And after I explain why I and other guys feel that way, I'm going to attempt to guess at why so many gals feel exactly the same way when reading about the women in the series. Fellas, there are some recurring themes with the men in this story that will make you feel like this author read your freaking diary. Rand goes through a few challenges, to say the least, but a big hurdle for him is sharing his burden with others. As the story goes on, he becomes convinced that he is the prophesied savior of the world, and he's ready to die to save it. That's fine. The real struggle for him is seeing that job as entirely his own. And this is a tough one for guys because it's not a simple yes-no problem. I mean, most of us get told that our job is to be a leader, a problem solver, a strong fixer and provider. Rand is the same way, telling himself he needs to be strong. He needs to be hard as stone, hard as steel to weather all of this. Eventually, him piling the weight of every responsibility on himself makes that hardness actually brittleness, and it almost ends in disaster. Rand's story is told well, though, because his refusal to let anyone in, it's not a pride or an ego thing, it's a duty thing. This is his job. As men, this is our job, so he's gonna do it, and he's not gonna offload it onto others.
You're hit. You're bleeding, man.
I ain't got time to bleed.
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
If it makes everybody comfortable, I'll go first. This is me, right here, okay? This is a classic husband and dad trap right here. We are problem solvers. That is our job. Now, if I solve problems, but then I tell everybody else about my problems, that doesn't decrease the total number of problems for everyone. Do you see how the math works? Okay? I know. It doesn't make sense. But it does though, right, fellas? Matt and Perrin are a little overlapping. They're addressing a similar idea, but it's their perspective that's different. Both of them are struggling with duty versus self. Most of this is about duty, FYI. The male brain, very obsessed with this concept. Matt's self problem is the fantasy of a free and open life. A lot of guys have this fantasy. He wants to be on the road, getting into adventures, gambling, carousing. Give this man the horizon. But there are people that need help. He has a family that has obligations. He's got leadership obligations to his men. Later on, he's got marital obligations. His life cannot be entirely his own. Perrin is the same way, except his fantasy is not travel and taverns, it's peace and quiet. It's the village he left behind, his forge, his new wife.
It's a peaceful life.
But there are people that need help. The town needs saving, and it needs a leader. He has responsibilities and obligations to his wife, his people. Even though their wants are polar opposites, both characters struggle with balancing those wants with what needs to be done, and accepting that sometimes they're the ones that need to do it. lastly, Lan. When we meet him, Lan almost seems to be a static character who will be guiding the others, helping them grow. A sort of Uncle Iroh kind of character who already sorted out things before the story began. As we progress, though, we see that Lan is using the stoic execution of his duty as a shield. If you never let your guard down, can't get hurt, right? And you can convince yourself that it's meaningful suffering and sacrifice because the cause is noble. It's a really good deal. What makes these characters impactful for us is that they are experiencing what so many of us experience, but their stories are more interesting and nuanced because they aren't entirely wrong. Let's go back to Rand. Dads, husbands, it is 100% correct that you not trauma dump all over your wife and your kids all the time. Like, yes, you absolutely should hold some of that back. It is your job to solve some of your own problems so you can be the stability that your family needs. And Rand's story actually reflects this with a wound that he takes early in the series that cannot be healed. It causes him continual pain, but talking about it doesn't fix anything, so he doesn't. It makes sense. But it also builds a habit of keeping things to himself, and Rand's journey shows us the eventual extreme of that process. We get to see the flaws in that thinking from the outside. We get to examine what takes it too far. For Matt and Perrin, yes, guys, it is entirely correct that you have your own wants, whether it's the peace and quiet in whatever is your smithy forge or your version of the cards and the drinks. Hopefully not the carousing. We see these characters grow and they stray too far to one side or the other of this equation, and we get to watch the effects and we learn from that. Lan is, you probably guessed it, absolutely right to be stoic and committed to his duty to a point. Again, he goes too far, and through him, we see this extreme caricature of stoic masculinity that so many guys are heading toward. They think that men and stoicism means like no emotions, stone face. But we see him find an eventual balance that let a few people in, let himself experience some life. Now, unlike so many modern writers who see men as problematic and in need of fixing, Robert Jordan said through these books, hey guys, I see you. I understand you. I understand your motives. I'm not telling you that you're wrong. I'm showing you what happens when you take it too far, and that way you can find balance. Popular headline right now is that there's some kind of male reading crisis, something like guys are just not reading or they're only reading nonfiction, productivity, self-help books. If that's you, I hope that you can see fiction has all the same life advice as that stuff. It has lessons and explorations of hard work and masculinity and duty and burnout and so much more, but also with magic and dragons and laser swords and pilotable robots and other cool shit. So read some fiction. Beyond that, there are plenty of healthy male friendships here. The three boys are great friends who had strong father figures. In addition, there was Lan and Rand, Perrin and Gaul, Tom and Matt, then Matt and Oliver. Loyal might be the best friend in the whole series. These are the kinds of engaging ideas and relationships that will grab you and stay with you. What did the show have? Sad, lonely, ineffectual guys, a mouth-breathing widower, a shady, philandering gambler, a sad, old, grumpy musician, a simping swordsman, non-existent fathers, a dead Loyal, if you can believe that. Only in season 3 did Lan and Rand finally start training together and beginning to form some sort of friendship. As a man, what is there in this show? Jordan gets it right with guys, but what's really impressive is that he also seems to understand women a little bit, because this is not a guys-only fandom. I don't know much about this, but I know an expert, my wife. So I asked her for what her favorite example was. She went with Fail, and I'm guessing this might be kind of common among wives. Fail is complex and really struggles to find balance in this story, and she is messy at times. Please take note, writers of Flawless Women. Fail is trying to support her husband, Perrin, to be the man that she sees. This great guy with all this potential. She sees other people respect him. He's a deep thinker. He's deliberate and thorough. But she also doesn't want to run him over. She's a pretty strong-willed person. She doesn't want to be that wife that's ambitiously pushing her husband for her own selfish reasons. She doesn't want to be a social climber. She's trying to find the sweet spot between submitting to her husband's leadership while also encouraging him to be great and reminding him of his duties because she's relying on him, but without being a nag or being greedy. At times, goes too far. She is way too pushy. Other times, Perrin's stubborn self needs some pushing, some shoving sometimes. But let's have a look at Show File. She meets Perrin as he is returning to town, and he's already the talk of the town. Some are already calling him a lord. Instead of her book story of being an actual noblewoman's daughter who wanted to make her own way in the world, so she joined the hunt for the horn, this File has an evil mother who murdered her brother, so she ran away and joined the hunt because, well, what else was there to do? So now she looks exactly like a social climber. She's attaching herself to Perrin because she has no other opportunities, then encouraging him to lead the town, with her by his side, of course. This is made even worse by Perrin still feeling guilty over his wife and File telling him that continuing to feel that guilt is dishonoring to her memory and her choice to fight. Yeah, she sees a powerful widower, clings to him, and tells him to forget his dead wife while flirting with him. Who wrote this? What woman is going to be watching this and rooting for her? Look, I don't want this section to be overly long and be purely speculation on my part anyway, but I am curious to hear from you female book readers. What were the characters or the themes that spoke to you specifically as a woman? Before we wrap this up, first, I appreciate you watching this far because that helps the video and the fundraiser get seen by more people, and it means more ad money that we get to give to this charity. Thank you guys for making this the most successful year for the third year in a row. Safe Families connects volunteer homes with families that need support, offering their home for extended childcare, helping the children and the whole family, keeping them together so the state doesn't have to step in. As a former foster parent, I can tell you that system is at times a necessary evil, but it's not great for anyone. Safe Families is extremely efficient. Your donation is not going to executives. It's actually helping people that need it. There's a button below, and I hope you consider giving and maybe seeking out a local chapter and volunteering. I have seen so many defenses of this season that it's the best so far. It's not exactly a high bar to clear, but I will agree it was the best because it slowed down and focused on characters and events, so they had weight, they had time to breathe. Unfortunately, there is no fixing the damage that was done in the first 2 seasons, so some characters are simply lacking a proper foundation, while others had to be wrenched back into their book place, which made them unrecognizable from their previous season selves. Some characters never existed, and now it's too late for the impact they should have had on the story and other characters. In the end, it's too little too late, and it made sense the show got canceled. I know some people did their best to like it because it's the best we're going to get. At least it's Wheel of Time. I am not content with that sad compromise. And as far as I'm concerned, there has never been a Wheel of Time show yet because this was a cheap imitation that shared little more than names. It was a vehicle for social commentary made by people who are living in a different reality than most of us, which is why it was impossible for them to write a show that would connect with us. This is not an isolated event. This is a major problem in entertainment right now, but this show is an amazing example because when you compare it to its source material, it is glaringly obvious. Some of these writers have a worldview that is entirely foreign to most of the audience. Their priorities, their moralities, their assumptions about human interaction, it is all irreconcilably different. And these stories will continue to fail so long as they are at the helm. What are your thoughts on the Wheel of Time show, or this difference in perspective that we're seeing lately? Was the show on the right track and had a future, or was it already doomed and they really put it out of its misery? Did you even make it to or through the 3rd season? I look forward to reading your thoughts. If you're interested in my Season 2 analysis that was focused more on how the show fails as an adaptation, it's going to be right here on screen. I appreciate you watching, and I hope that you'll consider giving to Safe Families. See you next time.